Another day, another dollar, another Sword Art Online video game. Hoo boy. We've been down this road before, 3 times actually, and I knew y'all weren't gonna let me off without talking about the new Sword Art Online game, so here we are again. For those who aren't familiar, SAO was one of those shows that had incredible potential. One that started as a gripping tale about introverts, corporate conspiracy theories, and learning to deal with grief, but also one that was completely ruined by excessive fan service, the main character, 2000s era H-game harems, incest subplots, creepy subplots, even more creepy sex pervert subplots, characters making completely illogical decisions, and the worst offender, shown in anime tropes. Breaking the video game with the sheer power of my mind? It's more likely than you think. Regardless of my opinions on the main plot of the show, the potential is still there for a good video game. While it's definitely inspired by something like Dot Hack, I always dug the world's different aesthetics, even the fairy one, like Fly for Free, but elves only. Unfortunately, and well, as expected, each one of those video games was received super well, especially by me. Initially, I was gonna pass on the newest one, but then I read a little about the latest arc of the show, Alicization. The one where somehow our harem leader, Kirito, the original and toughest black swordsman, gets sucked into not an MMORPG, but instead an episode of Black Mirror. This could be cool and different, which is basically what I said about the last one. Reiki Kawahara's huge fan service-filled franchise has been all over the place, but 2018's Fatal Bullet was finally the game that made me go, oh, okay, this ain't that bad. After years of duds, cheap tie-ins, subpar gacha games, and whatever the heck Lost Song was, they made a game I could almost get behind. TLDR for that video, look at this OC I made. Too bad Kirito's still the main character. Xenon? Nice. So in the year 2020, I'm not really sure what sword art is anymore. Where's the big picture? What started as an evil experiment causing 10,000 people to get stuck inside of a VR MMORPG has turned into kids playing cyber detectives with gamer guns that has now turned into something so convoluted and complicated that you need to put on your big boy seeing glasses to suss it out.
So yo, it's Austin, and this here is Sword Art Online Alicization Lycoris. But first, speaking of the gift of vision, let's talk about today's sponsor, Glasses USA. Glasses USA are an online retailer who cut out the middleman and offers prescription glasses at up to 70% off of retail prices. There's over 4,000 styles of different eyeglasses and sunglasses from in-house and designer brands with a ton of different color variations. A complete pair of glasses starts at only $30, so if you're wanting to freshen up your face and try something new, then well, you know where to go. Glasses USA has sponsored the channel before and was nice enough to send me a couple more pairs to show off to you guys, like these right here, rectangular, like a soft seafoam green to them. Kind of exactly my style. The website has this cool feature where you can upload a picture of yourself and see how you look in any of the frames that you're browsing, which is nice. And also, if you happen to have lost your prescription, you can use your phone, a laptop, and a pair of old glasses to see what your prescription is. The most useful for me personally have been the Game Specs series of glasses, which are tinted yellow and they're good for looking at screens for a long period of time, which I do when I'm editing or gaming. But hey, don't just look at me. Look at Rachel right here. She also can't see good at all. There's all kinds of styles and colors for all sorts of people, so you're bound to find something that fits you perfectly. Hey, what do you got to say about Glasses USA?
Click the link below.
If you need eyeglasses, you really can't beat the convenience here. So if you're looking for a new pair, check the link down in the description and for glassesusa.com, as they got a special offer just for you guys. But for now, back to Sword Art.
So, what's the premise? To really understand that, you have to know what in the world both Alicization and Gameverse mean. I wasn't aware at the time, but all of the SAO video games take place in a separate non-canon universe created by both Acria and Dimps. But why? Well, I guess to take creative liberties, like allowing you to play with dead characters. Ah yes, leftover Data, the best waifu. Alicization, however, is a little more complicated. Essentially, Kirito's decided to become a career man solely for the purpose of bringing his AI child from Aincrad into existence outside of a USB stick. I think. Anyways, he hops into a full dive machine thinking he's just gonna chill for a few days when suddenly he's isekai'd into a VR world where the passage of time runs 1,000 times faster than reality. But somehow his full ass brain is in the machine, so he's like really in there. There's a lot of cool, complicated words in play here like fluct light acceleration and microtubules, but let's just say both Kirito and the entire cast of Sword Art Online don't seem to care for the laws of robotics. This doesn't really make make much sense at all, but Alicization as a concept for a video game is a chance to try something completely different. Previous games had to tie themselves to an MMORPG-like format where there was a framework for something video gamey. But Alicization, God, I hate saying this word, takes place in a VR world called the Underworld, where at the beginning, Kirito is the only person in it. They could do anything. The only groundwork we have is that it's supposed to be a place where the world is oppressed by something called the Taboo Index, an arbitrary set of rules designed to mimic a strict cult or church. But the result? Sword Art Skyrim. No, I'm not sure what I expected. Alicization Lycoris is an awkward combination of words that actually has a specific meaning. Alicization being the name of the story arc centered around AI, Lycoris being a flower, a spider lily, that's supposed to represent reincarnation in Eastern Asian countries. The game starts with a very lengthy prologue covering the bits of the first half of the series before then changing the ending of it and becoming its own separate entity. Considering the gameverse isn't canon, then this means that this entire video game is a work of fan fiction. So if things weren't confusing enough, there you go. Alicization Lycoris means series reboot. Did it. Lycoris opens in probably the most generic method possible. After fighting what'll be the first boss of the first chapter in the game, in a tutorial, you're yoinked back to the past where Kirito finds himself freshly squeezed of all of his recent memories. That's right, no BS like in Fatal Bullet where you're just part of his endless harem. Alicization thrusts you directly into the role of Kirito. Now, go play a starter D&D module, go into this cave, kill a few goblins, and almost die. Oh, this here is Yu-Gi-Oh, by the way, who despite looking like a player 2 option is a completely different and almost likable character. That's Yu-Gi-Oh, not Yu-Gi-Oh, the superior one. By the way, I hope you like cutscenes, an endless, veritable wave of absolute nothing dialogue. I've ragged on these games for an excessive amount of talking in the past, but Lycoris takes the cake. Like 8 to 10 minutes of pointless exposition or small talk at a time. Conversations where Kirito spends an absurd amount of time trying to talk about his Aincrid style of sword fighting that he just literally copy-pasted from the first game he played. What about a weird and awkward harem-tiered dialogue about Kirito giving a girl's cat beef jerky? You got that? Yep, now it's here. Oh, but important story events that might be interesting to watch? Let's just do a few stills from the anime and jump forward in time. That doesn't matter. That's not what the people want. I'm so glad we spent so much time on another creepy sex pervert plot that is exclusive to the video game, but that time Kirito got arrested for directly violating the Taboo Index? This picture, that's all you need. The first chapter of this game feels like a fever dream of running from point A to B, endless cutscenes where people explain the book of Kiritolations at you, extremely long loading times, even on the PlayStation 5, and character stills for days. There's moments that are supposed to feel heavy and sad, but they're totally bogged down by the engine and how long-winded the dialogue is. It's basically Mel and Kirito in the infinite cutscenes, but something's missing here, and we'll get to that in a bit.
I don't really have too much to say about the plot of Alicization. It's basically every god-fighting Japanese RPG that eventually turns into a detective, sleuth, government conspiracy theory thing midway through. You know, normal stuff. Last time, the stronger gameplay from Fatal Bullet held it up quite a bit. But how does Alicization fare?
I legit didn't think I would ever put Skyrim and Sword Art next to each other, but here we are. I should really just get to the point with this. Gameplay is rough in nearly every possible conceivable way. Let's get to it. Similar to every Sword Art Online video game, you get to run around different zones that have stuff you can do. Lycoris is definitely the most ambitious take on that formula though. You have day and night cycles in each area with NPCs adhering to schedules and short quests that you can do. This can be like go kill 5 boars, go catch me some flowers down by the river, or go craft a necklace that I can give to my dad and pretend like I made it. Standard RPG stuff, but unfortunately closer to bloat for the sake of content than anything else. This game is actually extremely huge, with a lot of people citing the time to 100% close to 200 hours. That is somehow longer than Persona 5. However, I would say that a significant amount of that playtime is going to be fiddling with the UI and reading through menus. For some reason, the interface is not only laggy, but extremely hard to understand. Let's say I want to do a quest, a relic quest. There's a bunch of statues on each map that you can interact with, and they'll give you a thing to do. But there's no description of where to go to fight a thing, the map isn't marked with where exactly you should be going, and there's no words written on the map with important locations. So where am I supposed to go? I had to Google the solution, by the way. Turns out you can only only actively track one subquest at a time, and sometimes it'll tell you where to go. There's a little enemy icon marked on the map, which by the way looks almost identical to the relic icon, and in some cases it'll allow you to GPS on the ground to it. Also, when looking that up, I came across this post on Game FAQs. Welcome to the grown-up games where they don't hold your hand every step of the way. Ah, yes. The grown-up games. By the way, sometimes you'll have to literally Skyrim your way up mountainsides, like cliff jumping up the side of rocks. The GPS even tells you to do it sometimes. And this is more of a minor complaint, but the UI does a Destiny thing where you can't just press up and down, and instead you have to move a giant dial. That and switching between tabs is slow, unresponsive, and it won't move if you press it too fast. It just feels like the Switch eShop. But none of that matters if the gameplay is good, right? Fatal Bullet showed us that the series was on a good path with its fast and furious gunplay, but Lycoris is back to swords and sorcery, so can it be pulled off? Well, I miss Demps. I'm not sure what it is, but Acria cannot seem to pull off a legitimately good feeling combat system. I've played everything they've released in this franchise, minus the Excel World crossover, and Lycoris might actually be the worst it's ever been. I don't know how they did that. Devil May Cry 5, this is not. Actually, the very first note I took down was basically yikes. You know how in Dynasty Warriors you can dash out of an attack, you can change the trajectory of where you're looking? In Sword Art Online, if you do a move, you best be committing. It's like every one of the mini weapons is a Monster Hunter greatsword. You're gonna be swinging in the wrong direction for too long. Animations in this game in general are very awkward. Beyond normal stuff like janky looking running animations, for some reason a lot of the reactions to attacks and other poses are extremely slow when you get locked into them. Anytime you get knocked into the air, you just fly for what feels like an eternity. This is Major Tom. Finish a battle? You better enjoy watching Kirito put his sword away. Every time. The only way out is to start sprinting, and I don't know if that's intended. They did learn to not bloat the ability system like they have in the past, and they limit your character to 8 things tops. But since you can multi-spec and use every weapon in the game, your passive and active ability lists turn into a huge box of stat ups that are inherently confusing to look at. It's doable for those familiar with RPG systems, but for the more casual or normie sword art fan, it might be what's the word? Awful? The one saving grace of the combat system is the ability to take control of your AI partners this time. You don't have to give them head pats between every ability anymore. Instead, they actually use their abilities. You get to command launching group attacks, and you get to activate individual abilities by hot commands, and if you happen to die, you won't have to sit there and pray that the AI decides to res you. By the grace of the human empire, I can just swap to another character and try to survive. It's just not very fun. After playing Fatal Bullet, I really didn't know what I had until it was gone, and it's gone.
Alicization Lycoris is a ridiculously ambitious game, and I'm not really sure if the developer Acria could really pull all of that off. The huge amount of content, bloat, and worlds that you can traverse through are things that the AAAs can barely do. You've seen Cyberpunk, what was that? So when you see a licensed game like Sword Art Online attempting it, you gotta keep the expectation threshold a little bit lower. Especially when, after everything I've said, they are additionally advertising that the game has full co-op. Yeah.
There's something I wasn't expecting. Last time around, I remember the multiplayer in Fatal Bullet, at least at launch, being extremely disappointing. Lycoris, though, gave me the ability to run around in the open world and do not just random encounters, but story quests with a friend. This is something that, for me, can turn around the entire project, but I mean, come on. So when you reach Chapter 2, you unlock, once again, Kirito's Pad. The place where you can bring many of the lovely ladies into, but more importantly, the place where you can customize the way Kirito looks. At least they're upfront about it being Kirito this time around, just with a new avatar. Funny though, if you want to log on to multiplayer, it is a requirement to change his appearance and name. And so I did, and it froze on the loading screen. Again. Once again, I have made a cursed character. Thankfully, I reloaded and made a quick adjustment, but still, I refuse to accept the fact that a character creator made by 2 different developers froze on my Sword Art OC 2 times, 2 years apart. I'm very concerned. After finagling with the game, claiming we didn't exist for 30 minutes, I was able to connect to a friend and then constant freezing. There's world bosses you can fight, and if you pass through the area they're in, the game screams at you, pauses all momentum, and asks you to sync up, which which did fail multiple times. If you want to just run through the area to get to an objective, too bad, can't pass, gotta run around. It's constantly saving and freezing and halting your momentum, and it's basically unplayable at low level content. Like, how am I supposed to do this level 20 quest with a friend if I keep getting stuck on a mutation warning that I can't pass due to our data not syncing, and it keeps asking me to sync, but it won't? I'm getting mad, I'm sorry, what's going on? But of course, it's appropriate that the game with the most ambitious take on co-op, the one that has nearly Saints Row 2 levels of freedom and playability, is the worst one. And also, you're not gonna get there before like 13 hours of content because chapter 1 is so long, so that's a bust. But hey, at least we got gotcha with the cube shop, yay, gotcha. Actually, chapter 2 is where the game not only opens up, but formally turns into the Sword Art Online video game trademark. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The beginning is kinda awkward and long-winded, but at least it was trying something new. But the second we get access to Kirito's hut, the harem starts to fly in, the constant will they, won't they flirting dialogue begins, and the amount of female characters increases 20-fold. But at least we still have Yu-Gi-Oh! And whoever this guy is. Also, I can't get over the fact that the quest complete. It's just literally Skyrim. It's literally Skyrim.
Yeah! And here's where everyone's favorite part of these games comes into play. Affection meters, yeah. Yeah, affection. Love.
I'm not really sure why anyone likes this, or more so like why anyone would spend their time doing this. Bringing it back to Hollow Realization, Lycoris has the heart-to-heart minigames where you slowly approach a girl and select dialogue choices such as talk about the world, or hold hands, or glomp nuzzles you ooh woo. And you just do this over and over until they like you. You can do it in battles, but that takes forever. Why? For costumes and items, of course. Each character has events or social links that are all very identical. First they want you to fight them for some reason, then they need rescuing, then you get a slightly suggestive picture, then eventually you try to hold their hand to mixed results. Your reward for all of this is a bedtime scene where Kirito talks lying down sideways with whatever lady you desire, me of course with Xenon, the only acceptable choice in this entire universe. I still have no idea why they put in these weird mini games that involve the main character of the franchise actively cheating on his canon love interest. And the game made sure to remind me with a loading screen tip the second after. Like, hey, you know what you just did. It's past the point of sleazy sex fan service at this point. Like, haha, look at the boobs, but also look at us destroy the integrity of our main character. And it turns out I'm not alone either, as the lead producers of this video game from both Bandai Namco and Acria didn't want to keep putting them in the game. So I wonder whose fault that is. I feel like the story and tone they try to take on still has a dissonance where it wants to be serious but cannot help but show us TNA any chance it gets. And the impact of that is really bad. I've talked to death about how I think pervy fan service ruins anime in general, and Sword Art is definitely the shining bastion example of that. The inclusion of it in this game is ultimately pointless, distracting, and not a good look when you want to tell stories about women as victims of abuse. But hey, black swordsmen and titties go brrr. Overall, Alicization Lycoris isn't a bad Sword Art Online game, it's the worst. They've had years and years to try and make these better, but they take the formula and continue to push it further into the drain. You'd think after Fatal Bullet, they could have run with making the game at least run well, control properly, and have a decent combat system, but instead they, I don't really know what they were trying to do. It is a licensed game for sure though, one that had frame rate issues on PC. I could nitpick this to death. There's tons of moments that are infuriating, eye-rolling, or rough. For example, running through the same dungeon 2 times in a row, only leaving to talk to one NPC on the outside for story, the 1v1 duel system feeling like a mash fest due to the unpredictable blocking of your opponents, the literal tens of hours of non-stop nothing dialogue. There's so much more I could talk about, but it would be beating the dead horse. So I'm done. I'm not gonna eat the licorice, it's bad.
I will say, however, that Sword Art Online Alicization Lycoris was the first game to put me asleep not once, not twice, but 5 different times. Even at like 4 in the afternoon after a well night's rest. I was done, there was too much to do, it was too sleepy. Sleepy game, if you're an insomniac, might be a great cure. Basically what I'm saying is that the game was essentially sucking my soul out of my body, and it seems like a lot of Sword Art Online fans weren't really keen on it either. Well, unless your name is Famitsu, in which case you loved it. I'm getting sleepy thinking about it right now. Oh. Anyway, wake me up when the next Sword Art Online game comes out. It will. It's not over. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to click the link down in the description and check out glassesusa.com and save up to 70% on a brand new pair of frames. Special Patreon shout out to Ryan Talbert, Legend Gary, Kieran Arter, Kevin Zanowski, Jordy McCaffrey, Jacoby Fitzpatrick, Jay Roos, Flaming Fighter, Eli Shane Staufenecker, David Molnar, DX Buster, Donald Dowdy, D.A. Stevens, Christopher Olivia, Chris Shelton, and Brandon Howe. Thank you very much for the generous support. I did it. I did the sword art. It's so cursed, but it's okay. I'll live. Hey, new video on Friday also. What?